Dr. Gerhardt Konig has been accused of trying to push his wife off a cliff in Hawaii. Greg, tell us about the videos we're going to watch.
Well, push his wife off a cliff and other things. So his wife, what we're going to do here is we are going to do a he said, she said. We have the wife's testimony, the husband's testimony about what went wrong, and we're going to alternate those. So it'll be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. We think you'll enjoy comparing story to story.
What happened after you took the selfie while you were holding onto the tree?
I just asked him to move down the trail a little bit so that I could get past without having to go near the cliff.
And then how did the defendant react to that?
He was a little like, okay, and then he moved a few paces away.
Okay. So after the defendant moved down the trail a few paces away, what did you do?
Then I walked to him. So he was then facing me and the cliff, and I walked up to him. And again, everything was normal. I walked up and just kind of like brushed my hands against his shoulders, like kind of like a little hug.
Okay. As you had your hands against his shoulders, where was the defendant facing?
He was facing the cliff, facing me. My back was to the cliff, and he's facing me and the cliff.
And how far behind you was the cliff?
Feet, 10 or less.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear that.
10 or less feet.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, look, just a general overview of it. I think she answers clearly and concisely. Actually, Greg, this is her lawyer questioning.
Yeah,
or is this cross?
I think this is direct. Yep.
Yeah, this is direct. So, look, she seems, relatively confident, clear, concise with the answers. There's good, Chase, what you might call body narration. So, and the baton gestures. These are the gestures that conduct along to the rhythm of the speech. They're on point as well. And she has no problem repeating answers, and they come out pretty much the same as the first answer. So straight off the bat here, as a general, eyes squinted kind of overview of it, seems pretty good. But I'm open to more detail on it. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, Mark, there's a couple of things that really concern me in this. And it doesn't say she's guilty or lying or that kind of thing. But when she talks about that shoulder grab or shoulder hug, number one, we're going to hear a whole lot about shoulders and touching and that kind of thing as we go through here. And each one of them approaches it from a different angle. It's almost like it's protected territory, which I find to be disturbing a little bit. When she starts talking about, and again, normal, there's a verbal stumble at normal. She doesn't finish. It's the only place her cadence shifts. And then you see, if you slow it down, it is pronounced hard contempt in her left face, just as she says normal. And then she characterizes the thing as a little hug. Doesn't feel like that needs a narrative. Hey, I touched him on his shoulders and that was that. And she withdraws the sides of her mouth in disapproval. And her hands drop. And she looks down right. And she repositions the chair. And she has a noticeable drop in posture. All that doesn't mean that she's lying. That can mean she feels like something has gone horribly wrong that could have been great. Who knows? We can't read that. What we can do is tell you what we see. Otherwise, I see beautiful eye accessing to go find facts. I see her talking about information. What I do find interesting, the second one, is one of the most pronounced single shoulder shrugs, if you slow it down right at the end, I've ever seen. When she says, about 10 feet for the second time, when they ask her to repeat, that shoulder jumps up there. It's brilliant. If you slow it down, you can't miss it. I'm sure Sadie will pull it out in one of our others. Scott, what do you got?
I agree with you, especially on that shoulder shrug. And I think that's a great example because it shows you, or it exhibits somebody who's not sure about their answer and saying they're not sure. I mean, you can see she doesn't know. She says 10 feet or so, something like that. That's when it goes up. So I think that's a perfect example of the single shoulder shrug. I pretty much focused on all those kind of things about how calm she was. She's sort of loping along. Nothing seems to be, she's stressed, but I think she's got that under control because it's pretty much a blank face the whole time. So which I thought was interesting because this is not that long ago when this happened. And she's reliving this, or she's not reliving it. She's talking about it, going back to it, but there's no emotion that comes with it. That's the part that kind of bothers me a little bit. In a way, I understand. What did she do for a living? Anybody know?
He's a nuclear engineer, I believe, and a project manager.
Oh, okay.
High stress job.
Yeah, that's a pretty high stress job. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe she's learned to control her emotions and that kind of thing. But I think overall, she looks like she's being honest. I don't see any deception there. And I do see some odd facial things, but I'll go into that in a few minutes because there's some other odd ones as well. And that's where I'll sit on that. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's some genuine recall there. Our eyes move around in our head, and that's kind of like our little file clerk running around to find different pieces of information down in there. But one thing you'll see is her humerus bone, this little bone right here, kind of locks into the rib cage. And we tend to do this like when we experience fear, our body will naturally start protecting arteries. But she's recalling something that's probably very traumatic, and the person that she's accusing is in the room, probably watching her. So I think a lot of people think that trauma is like a memory, something that happened to you that you can't forget. But trauma is not really stored in the filing cabinet of your conscious mind. It's memorized by our bodies, and we've Bessel van der Kolk has proven this with lots of research and several other people. But your limbic system recorded this event that happens to you. So the heart rate, the muscle tension, the breathing patterns that you're going through, this neurochemical cocktail of survival. And it burned that recording into the nervous system like a groove on a record. So you don't remember trauma the way that you remember your first car. You kind of re-enter it like a sound or a tone or something that kind of plays. So this is why somebody recalls a traumatic event, you can watch their body start running that little program that got memorized. So that's where we see the humerus kind of rotating inward to the rib cage to shield that brachial artery. The chin drops a little bit to protect the throat. The shoulders round forward a little bit. None of that's conscious stuff. It's just a survival pattern that's written at the speed of a threat that comes at us. And you can't really think your way out of a trauma because you're not like fighting a memory. Your body's fighting a reflex that lives way below language and like your tissue, at a tissue kind of level. So I think we're seeing some stress signs here. One thing to keep in mind as we're going through here,
I spend a lot of time studying the signals and cues and tells people throw off, whether they realize it or not. And one of the most fascinating things I've analyzed is how people react to the tasks they subconsciously avoid. You know, I'm talking about they have that little shoulder shrug, or they'll go back too fast, they'll look away really quick, or maybe even the nervous little laugh when somebody says, yeah, you should probably book a doctor's appointment for that. But then they don't. Why is that? Because the process feels overwhelming. And finding an in-network provider, checking the reviews, then actually locking in an appointment can feel like a mental maze. And that's exactly why I use ZocDoc, the sponsor of today's video. It's a completely free website that lets you search, compare, and instantly look up appointments with high-quality in-network doctors across nearly every specialty, from mental health and dermatology, primary care to dentistry, and so much more. And when I say I personally use ZocDoc, I really do. And here's what happened. I was out of town and doing a training for a week. And I had thyroid cancer. And I had that taken care of. I've had my thyroid out and everything's fine. But when you get a little something on your neck, once you've had that, and it feels weird and you want to know what's going on, you want to know what's going on right then. So what I do, I got out my ZocDoc app, found a doctor, and that next day, by lunchtime, I'd found out that everything was fine. Everything was okay. And I would have done anything to not spend that next 2 weeks waiting for a doctor to see me. I didn't have to because I had ZocDoc. And some of the appointments you make are even available that day. Honestly, it's a game changer. No more calling around, no more wondering if a doctor takes your insurance. You can filter by search, insurance location availability, specialty, and even patient ratings. So if you've been putting off that doctor's appointment, don't wait any longer. Head over to ZocDoc.com/TBP or click the link in the description below to find and instantly book a top-rated in-network doctor today. Trust me, your health will thank you.
through here, we always talk about, oh, that's a stress indicator, that's a stress indicator. When we talk about deception, we're seeing a big old pile of these things instead of just like, here's a stress indicator, here's a little thing that happened during the story. So pay attention to when we're seeing piles versus individual things. That's all I got.
Hey, Chase, I'll add one thing to your point. If you watch her when she's talking about being surprised, the residual emotions there, you see her shock, her brows rise.
Yeah.
And you're right. All those memories are so deeply embedded, you can't retrieve them.
What happened after you took the selfie while you were holding onto the tree?
I just asked him to move down the trail a little bit so that I could get past without having to go near the cliff.
And then how did the defendant react to that?
He was a little like, okay, and then he moved a few paces away.
Okay. So after the defendant moved down the trail a few paces away, what did you do?
Then I walked to him. So he was then facing me and the cliff, and I walked up to him. And again, everything was normal. I walked up and just kind of like brushed my hands against his shoulders, like kind of like a little hug.
Okay. As you had your hands against his shoulders, where was the defendant facing?
He was facing the cliff, facing me. My back was to the cliff, and he's facing me at the cliff.
And how far behind you was the cliff?
Feet, 10 or less.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear that.
10 or less feet.
Are you related to any person involved in this case, Anil?
I am.
Okay. Who are you related to?
The defendant?
Is that Gerhardt Konig?
Correct.
And who is Gerhardt Konig to you?
My father.
You're continuing on the hike. What happens at some point? What did something happen that led to an argument?
Yes.
Tell the jury what happened that led to an argument. Well, first of all, how far up into the hike was it?
Not very far. Just like 5 minutes. Like after about 5 minutes of hiking, you get to a part where it flattens out a bit, and the edge isn't like the cliffside isn't open, but there's a couple of spots where you can get to the cliffside if you wanted to. So we're kind of still in that area, the same area that picture was taken.
Okay.
And Aries says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. I'm working on this project with Jeff Miller, and I'm gonna need to travel with him again, and I need you to be okay with that. Is that okay?"
Okay.
And
so she was kind of telling you like, hey, there's just things at work going on. I need you to be okay with this. And asking you to trust her.
Yes.
Okay. And again, you mentioned you guys weren't talking about the affair at home anymore because of counseling, correct?
That's correct.
And you guys weren't talking about it in counseling a lot at that time?
We hadn't gotten to
That.
kind of the core of it yet.
So she brings this up. What is your reaction to it?
I'm very surprised. Yeah.
Okay. Were you upset and angry?
I wasn't angry. I was surprised and upset, and I told her no. Like I'm not okay with that. And not only am I not okay with that, like I'm never going to be okay with that. Like we haven't dealt with that part. Like the only reason why I was okay with her still even working there is because we had placed these limits on their communication. But in my mind, like she still needed at some point to quit her job, and this was only put on hold while we were trying to deal with all these other things. She basically said like, well, I can't quit my job right now because I don't even know if I want to stay with you. So we were dealing with like the issues that she brought up first, but it's not like any of the affair had been resolved at all. Like it had just kind of been put on hold. And so
how did you feel that she would even think that this would even be okay?
Yeah, I mean, it made me realize that we were just not on the same page at all in terms of like here I am just kind of like sublimating my feelings and focusing on her hurt and waiting patiently for her to do the same to me. And this made me feel like she wasn't intending on doing that ever.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
So we usually talk about two schools of body language. There's the baseliner and then there are absolutists. Well, this is a great clip to show you the difference between the two. There's a reason that sign says baseline back there. That means you start from a norm for the person. And I usually say not the norm sitting at home eating Cheetos on the couch, but the norm in the situation. You look for what's normal for them and for deviation. So in effect, it becomes what's normal for the individual. This guy does two things. He grabs his nose and his brow is up all the time. Well, if your brow is up all the time, I will say this is when a child's talking to you and they say, and then the cat jumped on the counter and broke the cookie jar, and then they drop their little forehead. They're trying to get you to believe something. But this guy's forehead's always up. We're gonna have to look for a deviation in that, for a baseline deviation. The other thing is he grabs his nose. What does that mean? Nothing to me, because I don't see it. Random. Maybe you guys saw something I didn't mixed in with it, to the point that Chase just made a few minutes ago. Deception is bunches of stuff, clusters of stuff. So what we see here is we get a baseline, and he starts to illustrate and tell us a story. Uses his hands. We call those illustrators, punctuating what he thinks. While his forehead is up, he's got confidence in his hands because his fingers and everything are separated, and he's punctuating his thoughts. I always say, if your mind, your body, and your mouth are saying the same thing, you'll turn into a symphony. If they're not, it gets really ugly. Your body starts doing its own thing, and your mouth doesn't line up. He highlights the jury when he's got something that he came to say. Very closely, he looks right at the jury. When he doesn't, he turns back, ums and hum and ahs, and then turns to the attorney, and the attorney rescues him with those straight-on one-line questions, yes or no. He does close his eyes, and I'm going to leave it right after this one, but he closes his eyes, and he's talking about being surprised. Most people don't close their eyes when they tell you about being surprised. Their brows go up. But the thing I do see is his mouth narrow. When his mouth narrows, we associate that with anger. And the guy even asked him, were you angry? There's a whole lot of other stuff in here when he gets emphatic around what, no, she can't do that. I'll leave that. But Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I totally agree. And we don't always have a chance to watch video of a person that we're looking at from 8 months ago when they were hanging out at the family reunion or something. So we have to go with what we got, which is this. But we also know he's an anesthesiologist, as I understand it.
Yep.
And probably is competent, well-spoken, probably doesn't speak this fast when he's talking to patients. But throughout this clip, I don't see a lot of stress that's visible, although he's claiming he's the one who was attacked during the hike. He's facing the jury and doing lots of what looks to me like rapport development, trying to recruit the jury. These eyebrow flashes, the open hands, constant, almost approval-seeking glances for confirmation and connection with the jury. This looks like a pitch to me right now. And when you contrast this to what you saw in the last video, there's a very distinct and obvious difference in these two. One of them is going through something rough, from what it seems, and the other's doing a lot of approval-seeking and perception management and trying to connect. And I hope he wouldn't coach to look at the jury like this. It's not usually a good idea from my research and my experience. That's all I got. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, interesting to keep in mind that he's an anesthetist, often the most expensive person in the room.
Yeah.
They really do control life and death in many ways more than the surgeon. And so interesting. He's calm, he's concise. He does get, let's say, agitated around the job and the issues around his wife continuing this job. But he's confident with the emotion that he's describing and showing. You can see the fingertips are wide apart. His baton gestures, though more agitated and faster, are still on point. So I agree, Greg. Like, both of these first ones we've seen are great baselines for these people. So I think, clearly out of his normal situation of being in charge here, but still calm, concise, agitated, confident, showing us and talking about these emotions. So I'm interested, what do we see with both of these people as we go forward, and what changes and what remains the same about this? Scott, what do you got on this one?
I agree with you. And so I did this almost exact same thing, like Greg was saying earlier, on my channel. I did a video of this, and a lot of these things are almost the same. So I'm going to go over some things that are different than the ones I've already covered. So it's not the same thing every time. So for the most part, I think he's being honest. The only caveat I have here is when he does say the word angry. When his attorney asks him about that, he doesn't say angry. He just says angry. It almost gets there. So that gives me the feeling he's trying to skirt around that so it doesn't look like he was mad. Because if he's mad, then everybody's going to think, well, of course he did that, because of the anger. So, and when you lie, your brain's got to do three things. It's got to stop you from lying. When someone asks you questions, you got to stop you from lying. It's got to make up the answer. Then it has to deliver the answer. And we're not seeing that pause between his answers there. Usually when they start answering, you'll see when the question is asked, they'll pause for a second, and they'll go in, and then they'll answer, and then they'll wait a second, and they'll give something else. None of that in here. It seems to be going straight away. As Mark was saying, his illustrators seem fine. They're not real high, but they're not real low. But they're there. You can see them. We've got those fingers between the spaces. Just repeat what you said, Mark, which that suggests that he's got confidence with those answers. So I don't think he's being deceptive here at all. And his voice volume and cadence and tone, those are all here. They're fairly steady. They're going to change in a little while. We'll talk about that. But right here, they're all the same. Everything sounds good. It sounds confident, like he's told this before with no problem. Usually, when a person has a story and they're lying about it, and they tell it again, it'll change a little bit, and then they'll get the structure down, where it's this almost like a cookie cutter thing as they go along, so they know what they're going to say. He knows what he's going to say, but doesn't have every word locked down. So, and when they do have every word locked down, then they talk like I normally talk, where they'll stop and wait and stop, and it'll be jerky sounding. So he starts that in a little while, but right here, it's not very bad at all. I think it's a good, I hate to say baseline, because there's really not enough time for us to get a baseline on him, like Chase was saying, but I think it's a good example of him being non-deceptive, I think, for the most part, except for that part about angry where he's dodging that word. So, all right, we good?
Yeah.
Greg's was fastest. I'll give you that. Greg was in
That
good.
was good.
You're continuing on the hike. What happens at some point? Did something happen that led to an argument?
Yes.
Tell the jury what happened that led to an argument. Well, first of all, how far up into the hike was it?
Not very far, just like 5 minutes. Like after about 5 minutes of hiking, you get to a part where it flattens out a bit, and the edge isn't, like, the cliffside isn't open, but there's a couple of spots where you can get to the cliffside if you wanted to. So we're kind of still in that area, the same area that picture was taken.
Okay.
And Aries says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. I'm working on this project with Jeff Miller, and I'm going to need to travel with him again, and I need you to be okay with that. Is that okay?"
Okay. And so she was kind of telling you, like, hey, there's just things at work going on. I need you to be okay with this. And asking you to trust her.
Yes.
Okay. And again, you mentioned you guys weren't talking about the affair at home anymore because of counseling, correct?
That's correct.
And you guys weren't talking about it in counseling a lot at that time?
We hadn't gotten to
That.
kind of the core of it yet.
So she brings this up. What is your reaction to it?
I'm very surprised. Yeah.
Okay. Were you upset and angry?
I wasn't angry. I was surprised and upset, and I told her no. Like, I'm not okay with that. And not only am I not okay with that, like, I'm never going to be okay with that. Like, we haven't dealt with that part. Like, the only reason why I was okay with her still even working there is because we had placed these limits on their communication. But in my mind, like, she still needed at some point to quit her job, and this was only put on hold while we were trying to deal with all these other things. She basically said, like, well, I can't quit my job right now because I don't even know if I want to stay with you. So we were dealing with, like, the issues that she brought up first, but it's not like any of the affair had been resolved at all. Like, it had just kind of been put on hold. And so,
how did you feel that she would even think that this would even be okay?
Yeah, I mean, it made me realize that we were just not on the same page at all in terms of, like, here I am just kind of like sublimating my feelings and focusing on her hurt and waiting patiently for her to do the same to me. And this made me feel like she wasn't intending on doing that ever.
Right. So, okay, after this happens, after you get to where the defendant is on the trail, what happened next?
When I walk up to him, then he grabbed me really forcefully by my upper arms, and he said, "I'm so sick of this shit. Get back over there." And he starts pushing me back towards the cliff.
While the defendant was grabbing you and pushing you, what did you do?
I mean, I was surprised. It felt almost like he was kidding at first, and I was like, "What are you doing?" But he had grabbed me really hard, and was moving me. So we kind of wrestled a little bit, and I threw myself onto the ground because there's a lot of trees and shrubs there, so that I could hold on.
As you threw yourself to the ground, how did the defendant respond?
Well, he got on top of me, and he was kind of trying to pull me, and we're wrestling, and he ended up straddling me. So he had his legs on either side, kind of across my waist.
On March 24th, 2025, how tall were you?
About 5'6",
And how much did you weigh on that date?
about 145 pounds.
Okay. And on that date, how tall was the defendant?
About 5'10",
And how much did he weigh?
maybe 165 pounds.
Okay. And then you said straddling. Can you describe what that looked like for us?
Sure, I'm laying on my back, and he's on top of me with kind of like one leg on either side across my waist, facing me.
Once the defendant was on top of you, what did he do next?
So he was first trying to pull me, trying to get me closer to the cliff. And again, I could kind of hold on to the roots and stuff that were around us. And then he had a backpack that he was hiking with. And he, like I said, he's on top of me. And he had a syringe in his hand. And he says, "Hold still." And I see the syringe, and I just kind of like bat it away from us both.
Okay. When you first saw that syringe in his hand, did you actually see where it came from?
I didn't see where it came from, no.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
There's obvious stress here and difficulty talking through it. But one thing I notice is there's an instant shift to present tense when she's describing the situation when she's on her back. I'm on my back, and so it shifts into present tense. As far as I could remember from what we just watched, I don't think she was prompted in present. That's notable. And you can tell she's told a story several times here, but you can see how her body still gets rigid and a little more jerky while she's recalling the stressful part of this. One thing that got to me here is how she's talking about the syringe. She says, "I batted it away from us both." And this is a team pronoun. Not "I batted it out of his hand" or "I batted it away from me." It was "I batted it away from us both." That really stood out to me. It may just be a coincidence choice of words, but I don't think it's indicative of any deception, in my opinion. But it's definitely going to sharpen what I might be listening for in the next few videos. Finally, her blink rate, which is a stress signal, how often we blink, how frequently, it's high as she's going through this description of events. But remember, there are no behavioral indicators of deception. There's just stress, some cognitive load indicators, some inherited mammalian stuff. But we look for piles of these instead of one. So she's throwing stress here with the blink rate increase, and that's about all I saw. We could see stress with the rigidity increase as well. Scott?
All right. Yeah, it makes sense to me. So I think that it's a smooth delivery. You're right. There's no pauses, no jerky, starts and stops in there. Her sentences aren't fast and choppy, and they're not too quiet. However, she does do that. It sounds like fading facts when she gets to the end of almost every sentence from the beginning of this thing. She gets quiet toward the end. So I think that might be something she does all the time, because she does it throughout all these videos. So I'm not going to count that as being deceptive, because it's there all the time. I'd say her baseline, because we haven't had enough time to look at her baseline, or get a baseline on her, but that's what it seems to be. And also when she's talking about her weight and his weight and their height and stuff like that, that's where the fake fading facts come in the most. So again, I'm going to lean on saying that's one of the first things I go, it's fading facts. This is one of those cases where I don't believe it is at all. Not even a little bit. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that I'm hearing here. It's clearly she's distressed at the story. It's a distressing thing. There seems to be real emotional and picture recall. Her eyes go down, her eyes shut. For me, that could most likely be she's picturing what happened. She's recalling some of the emotions of it. We hear some breaks in her voice there. We do get some vocal clicks, but at the end of sentences, I think that's clearing some dryness in the throat. I don't think that's around deception. I think that's around emotion. I mean, it wouldn't be around deception anyway. We're not seeing enough of a cluster of stuff. I think we maybe see some glistening in the eye. I think the eyes might be tearing up slightly. I certainly see some redness in the eyes that I wasn't seeing before in what I'll call the baseline of her. There's a couple of grooming gestures in there, but again, there's nothing else to go with them. So it feels to me like a pretty factual story from her point of view. But again, I'm willing to have my mind changed on it. Greg, you got anything?
I got a couple of things I don't like that happen. I'll get to those in a second. Let me tell you what I do like. Well, and then I'll get back to what I don't like. When she's talking about this actually happening, watch the residual shock of something actually happening. Her brows rise up, and then she's talking about him pushing her toward a cliff. Her mouth closes, her nostrils flare, and you really have to look to see that micro expression of disgust. It goes rapidly across her face. So that all is the stuff you would expect from a person who's been betrayed by a spouse who they think something's going to happen. That's all good. But when they ask her a question, what did you do? Go listen to the sentence she responds with. It's rambling and a non-answer until she says, I finally threw myself to the ground. It is a non-answer. As strong a non-answer as I've ever heard anywhere. Now, could that be chalked up to the fact there's so much adrenaline and that brain is not accessible? Absolutely. But it doesn't seem to be that way anywhere else in here. So it's really interesting for me. So, and I'll tell you what here. When he said, what did you do? There's an immediate look down to inner voice. She loses cadence and sentence structure. She rambles. Her eyes are closed. There's a heavy swallow. Usually I expect a person who's feeling something to have some emotion and other things to go with it. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen this way. Again, I'm going to go back to the other thing I don't like. Now we're back to the shoulder grabbing, the shoulder touching that we're going to hear more and more times. And when she acts it out, Chase, you call it body narration. This is when you take an illustrator and you're actually pointing to what happens. Her hands don't close. She's still touching the shoulders. I would think when it's that dramatic, I expect it to be emphatic, and I don't see emphatic. So two minor things, yes, but really odd for me, that rambling thing. And then the last one is she explains why she threw herself to the ground. Well, I would say I threw myself to the ground to try to get away, but she doesn't. And when she does that, she says, I threw myself to the ground to get some roots and trees. We see her brow up for the first time, go to request for approval, really up, and we see a grief muscle pop in there. Don't know what causes that. I want to know more. But that thing is held there until her attorney says something, and then it drops. And then she gets to, and then he had a syringe. Okay, should we be paying attention a little bit closer to her? Does it mean that it didn't happen? Does it mean that you're protecting some other thing? I mean, if you get in a knockdown, drag out fight with your spouse and he hits you in the head with a rock, he's still trying to kill you. So this is not an accusation of her. But Mark, I do see a couple of things that make me concerned.
What do y'all think about this so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets more interesting.
I do too.
Let's say.
Ask me at the next
Let's say
one.
that.
Ask me after the next one.
Yeah.
Chase, you're smiling like a possum. What are you thinking?
This, well, the clip we have coming up is like one of the best. This is a record setter.
Right. So, okay, after this happens, after you get to where the defendant is on the trail, what happened next?
When I walk up to him, then he grabbed me really forcefully by my upper arms, and he said, I'm so sick of this. Get back over there. And he starts pushing me back towards the cliff.
While the defendant was grabbing you and pushing you, what did you do?
I mean, I was surprised. It felt almost like he was kidding at first, and I was like, what are you doing? But he had grabbed me really hard and was moving me. So we kind of wrestled a little bit, and I threw myself onto the ground because there's a lot of trees and shrubs there so that I could hold on.
As you threw yourself to the ground, how did the defendant respond?
Well, he got on top of me, and he was kind of trying to pull me and we're wrestling, and he ended up straddling me. So he had his legs on either side, kind of across my waist.
On March 24, 2025, how tall were you?
About 5'6",
And how much did you weigh on that date?
about 145 pounds.
Okay. And on that date, how tall was the defendant?
About 5'10",
And how much did he weigh?
maybe 165 pounds.
Okay. And then you said straddling. Can you describe what that looked like for us?
Sure. I'm laying on my back, and he's on top of me with kind of like one leg on either side across my waist, facing me.
Once the defendant was on top of you, what did he do next?
So he was first trying to pull me, trying to get me closer to the cliff. And again, I could kind of hold on to the roots and stuff that were around us. And then he had a backpack that he was hiking with. And he, like I said, he's on top of me. And he had a syringe in his hand. And he says, hold still. And I see the syringe, and I just kind of like bat it away from us both.
Okay. When you first saw that syringe in his hand, did you actually see where it came from?
I didn't see where it came from, no.
And what happened after that?
Right after the selfie, I just remember kind of staying at the edge there and looking over the edge and just kind of still in thought about everything that had just happened and what's going on. And then I felt like a shove, and I was almost pushed over the edge.
Okay. You felt a shove. Okay. Who shoved you?
Henry did.
What did you do right after that?
Barely caught myself and turned around and looked at her and was like, "What the like?"
Okay. Turned around and it was like what like was like kind of in shock, like what the is that?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you move towards her?
Yeah, I did. I was like, just asking her, like, what was that, and started walking towards her, because at this point she was like 5 or 10 feet away from me.
Okay. So you walk towards her, and you mentioned when you're walking towards her, where were your hands?
Out.
Okay. Now, did you get close to her?
Yes, eventually. Yeah. Well,
And by the way, when you start walking towards her, is she saying anything?
not initially, but I turn around and I'm asking her, like, what the hell's just happened and what's going on. And as I'm starting to walk towards her, she starts yelling.
She starts yelling.
Yeah, help me, help me.
Okay. And then what happens?
And then I just keep walking to her, like, what are you doing?
Were you telling her, like, why are you screaming?
Yeah, what are you doing? And I get to her and I'm like, touching her, just putting my hands on her arms, and I was like, what are you doing? What's going on?
What happens then?
She keeps yelling, and she kind of grabs my wrists and throws herself on the ground and pulls me down with her.
So now you guys are on the ground?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, so his respiration is now through the roof. Well, he's in trouble. He's on the hot seat, so it should be through the roof. But he probably would control it a little more if he were not trying to be deceptive in any way. He does a pronounced tongue jet. We don't see this very often that sticks out. People will always say, John Ramsey stuck his tongue out, so I know he's lying. Nope, again, not a good baseline. But we've seen this guy talk enough to know that he doesn't casually stick his tongue out until he gets to who tried to push you down the hill.
Tell him about who said that about tongues.
Yeah,
and all
I
that.
will. Yep, I
Okay.
will. Yep.
Sorry.
So as he pushes his tongue out, and what Desmond Morris said in his book, The Naked Ape, was that humans' first no is the ability to push a nipple or food out of their mouth. And so we see that as dismissal or as disagreement. There's also one of my other favorite things here. There's an omission of time, what I call hiding time. Joe Navarro or Navarro and Schaefer would call this a verbal bridge. I call it hiding time, where he says, at this point. You hear at this point, you hear after that, you hear and then. It's an opportunity to hide things. And there's a geospatial difference in them. She was pushing him off the hill. Now she's 5 or 10 feet away. And there's time in between there that we don't know exactly what the hell happened. So what happened in there? Not really sure. You can also tell what he came to deliver, back to the point when he looks at the audience or he looks at the jury, whether somebody prepped him, Chase, to your point, or whether he just thinks it's the right move, looking at the jury. That's what he came prepared to tell. When he gets in a bind and he gets to that whole, when he gets to a point where he can't pronounce something or he starts falling apart, then he turns right back to his attorney because it's like a life ring in that water. And then when I talked about his request for approval not being a big deal because his forehead's always up until it is. Now watch his forehead really rise when he's saying, I went out with my hands holding out to go after it. And he does a whole change in cadence. His diction falls off. Everything about him falls off. And that, remember, when I say your mouth and your brain and your body are all saying the same thing, when your brain's thinking one thing and your mouth is saying another, your body has a hard time keeping up. So we start seeing loss of fluency. Cadence shifts, pitch tone shifts. We see difference in body language and pronunciation, difference in asking for approval. This is starting to come apart for him, in my opinion. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree. And so it's radically different from what I would call that baseline of video 2, radically different. He had, in the first video we saw of him, he had very direct gestures, really direct. Now his gestures have become indirect. They're kind of waving in the wind somewhat. They're a bit more like water rather than sharp objects cutting through the air. Just as you say, Greg, we've got and then, like, well, what happened in the and then? What was it? Not what was it like? What actually happened? He nods in agreement to his own story while looking at the jury. So again, that suggests to me he's trying to teach the jury how to respond to his story. Very clear around her grabbing his wrist, really clear mime of that. But then when he goes to, she throws herself on the ground and throws me down with her, there's no mime on that. The hands have disappeared. And when you think about it, so she's holding his wrists, she throws herself on the ground and throws him down with her. No, she would pull him down with her. You can't throw yourself and throw somebody else at the same time. I don't.
Even Seagal could.
Yeah.
It's judo, Mark. It's judo.
Yeah.
Seagal.
So mate, martial artists, please correct me down in the, and I'll send Chase in there, who did a 14-day course online. So it was an online course. And so, is where you've done all the psychic stuff as well,
of course,
all of that stuff. So he'll be in there as well, correcting that. But I still don't think, with my rudimentary understanding of biomechanics and how to narrate and describe those biomechanics, that you can throw yourself to the floor and throw somebody at the same time. You drag them down. There's a discrepancy there. Especially, look, this is a guy that really would understand biology and the mechanics of the body. And so he's not describing it in the best way. And anyway, I don't like that suddenly the mime ends on that as well. Don't like it at all. Very different from the first video we saw. Scott, what do you got on this one?
I'm going to say this apropos of nothing in here, except for me watching, like we always do when we watch each other when this is going on. I remember the first time I saw you on YouTube, Mark. I remember the very first time I said, I gotta get to know that guy. You were on some British TV news show or something, and you were talking to these people, and you were talking about gestures, and you said almost the exact same thing you did then as you did right now, and you've opened up with the gestures part. So I think that's, and every time, if y'all go look up Mark Bowden on YouTube, watch him. He wears the same kind of clothes. Nothing has changed. He hasn't aged. Nothing, man. Nothing. So it's starting to make me wonder what the hell's going on here, Mark.
Yeah, I have a picture of me up in the attic that is
aging.
That is aging.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not worried yet. I'll let you know when I am. So there are a lot of repetitive answers here, a lot of this fake confusion he's got going on, but there are no emotions that are coming with that. I'm leaning heavy on emotions now because you're dealing with a couple. And when they fight, it's all about emotion at that point. They're screaming, hollering, you did this, you did that. They they lightly touch that. But then when they get into the stuff that should be, when he says, I felt a shove, he didn't feel a shove. He would have said, she tried to push me off the cliff. I'm standing on the cliff. She damn near pushed me off. And then he'd look back at the jury and say, I'm telling you, that's what she did. This, I'm just standing there out of nowhere. She comes up, tries to push. You don't say, and I felt a shove. No, nobody's going to say that at all. And his answering to the jury, like you said earlier, Chase, I hope he hadn't been trained to do that, because it looks so lame. And when they ask you a question, look, you start answering them. It looks so bad. Some people can pull it off. This guy can't.
Amber Heard pulled it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Work for her. Work for her. So his illustrators, they're a lot less than they were earlier, and they're lower too. So, and again, going back to what Mark's saying, also, we know from studies from Albert Ray that the person who uses the least amount of illustrators, once they've illustrated a lot, that usually suggests that they're not being honest, that they're being deceptive. So, and his voice tone, volume, and cadence, those things are a little bit lower as well. So that makes that, I go back to that. I was talking about hers going lower, everything being low. But in this case for him, I get the feeling from watching this guy's being deceptive here. So because the person lying will lower their volume like that, but hers has been low and doing that the whole time. That's why, at the end of her sentences and everything, but his hasn't. So that's the big red flag for me here. Chase, what about you?
Yeah, and we're in second category, Amber Heard territory, with the I just remember at the beginning of some of those statements.
Okay.
But there's also eye blocking here. As he's kicking off this statement, you can kind of see him look down and his eyes kind of close a little bit. His hands become influent. I might have made that word up.
I like it.
They previously matched his speech perfectly. He's shaking his head as he's saying, I just remember, as if he's like dismissing. Like he's dismissing something. It was these small, fast shakes, not a big denial shake. And then softening words, kind of staying at the edge there, kind of still in thought about everything. I would bet as an anesthesiologist, he doesn't speak like this to patients. And then we have the time bridging, and then there's distancing language and softening language combined. I felt like a shove, like a shove.
Yep.
He knows who he's accusing, but softening ownership makes it a lot easier. And then, Greg, you pointed out, I think when he says, who pushed him, there's a tongue jut / lip licking and eyebrow flash at the same time. He's out of breath. He's breathing into his chest, which is indicative of more stress. And then how does that happen when she gets 10 feet away after she pushes him?
Teleportation.
Wow. But if you look at this, turn the volume off and look at it. It looks like a trapped teenager who's looking back and forth between two different parents, trying to convince both of them. And this is one of the most powerful clips illustrating how powerful and how prevalent clusters are in the right moments. And obviously all four of us here, we deal in likelihoods instead of certainty. But I will say this is the highest likelihood I will maybe forecast for any clip that we've ever seen. That's all I got.
And what about those tongue juts? Did you see that?
Oh,
It was
yeah.
almost comical.
Pronounced. Yes.
Yeah.
We need to make a short out of that one.
Hey, you asked what we thought at the end of the last one. You should go around now.
Do what?
You asked what we thought up to now on the last one.
Yeah.
You should do
All
it.
right. Yeah. So what does everybody see? What does everybody think so far?
I'm still reeling from Chase's word influent, which I think is I think it's good enough. As in water, Latin for as in water.
Yeah. I think we should have Scott ask ChatGPT what influent means.
No kidding. And he's saying that because go ahead.
I did research on this morning. You know what rocked me was that the son testified against his father.
You should know.
Ooh.
Yeah. So hang on, because
And-
I'm interspersing those in between these, and there's a surprise ending.
Yeah. So
So
we don't
you
want
just shot a surprise in the foot. But
You
well,
delete
don't
it?
say anything else. Don't say anything else. No, I'm not going to delete it.
Okay.
Leave it
great.
on.
That's great.
So good call. Good call.
Great.
Thanks
right.
for ruining the episode,
Yeah,
Scott.
brilliant.
Oh, it's okay, Chase. That's
Real
okay.
nice.
And
Real classic.
Mark's growing a beard.
And what happened after that?
Right after the selfie, I just remember kind of staying at the edge there and looking over the edge and just kind of still in thought about everything that had just happened and what's going on. And then I felt like a shove, and I was almost pushed over the edge.
Okay. You felt a shove. Okay. Who shoved you?
Henry did.
What did you do right after that?
Barely caught myself and turned around and looked at her and was like, "What the f-? Like?"
Okay. Turn around and it was like what like was like kind of in shock, like what the f was that?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you move towards her?
Yeah, I did. I was like, just asking her, like, what was that, and started walking towards her, because at this point she was like 5 or 10 feet away from me.
Okay. So you walk towards her, and you mentioned when you're walking towards her, where were your hands?
Out.
Okay. Now, did you get close to her?
Yes, eventually. Yeah. Well,
And by the way, when you start walking towards her, is she saying anything?
not initially, but I turn around and I'm asking her, like, what the hell's just happened and what's going on. And as I'm starting to walk towards her, she starts yelling.
She starts yelling.
Yeah, help me, help me.
Okay. And then what happens?
And then I just keep walking to her, like, what are you doing?
Were you telling her, like, why are you screaming?
Yeah, what are you doing? And I get to her and I'm like, touching her, just putting my hands on her arms, and I was like, what are you doing? What's going on?
What happens then?
She keeps yelling, and she kind of grabs my wrists and throws herself on the ground and pulls me down with her.
So now you guys are on the ground?
Yes.
Okay.
On the morning of March 24th, 2025, was your dad and your stepmom home?
No.
Okay. Do you know where they were that day?
Oahu, here.
They were on Oahu?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why the defendant and Ariel were visiting Oahu?
For Ariel's birthday.
All right. And you said you were able to bat it. Do you know where it went?
It just fell on the ground sort of near us. It would have been to my left because I could still kind of see it in my periphery. So I was trying to make sure it wasn't going to get grabbed again.
And then could you describe what you remember about the syringe, what it looked like?
Sure. It was a clear syringe with a blue piece, maybe blue plunger, I guess is what that's called.
Once you were able to bat the syringe away onto the ground, what did the defendant do next?
So he had taken his backpack off and it was on the ground to his left, so kind of to the right side of my body here. And he was digging in that with his left hand and then kind of holding me down with his right hand. And I'm screaming and I'm saying, what are you doing? Get off me. And he's saying, like, you're done. I'm so sick of your, so done with you. And I'm trying to kind of protect myself and get out of there. But also he's gripping his hand closed really hard. And there's a vial in his hand. So I was trying to pry his hand open so I could grab that vial out.
Okay. Which hand did you see the vial in?
The vial was in his right hand.
Okay. And did you actually get to see the entire vial?
No.
Okay. What part of it did you see?
I could see pieces of it because I'm trying to like pry his fingers off of it so that I can grab it and throw it.
Were you able to open his hand that was holding the vial?
Not enough to get the vial away.
All right. You mentioned the defendant was saying some things. Can you tell us what you remember he said as he was on top of you?
Yeah. I'm screaming and he's telling me, shut up. Nobody's going to hear you out here. Nobody's coming to save you. And I'm saying, like, you can't do this. Everyone knows we're on a hike. They'll know this wasn't an accident and our kids will be orphans. You'll go to jail and I'll be dead. Like, you have to stop. And again, he's saying, like, you're done. We're done with you. We don't need you anymore. You're done. You're done.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
So we see her narrating with her body without any hesitancy, no uncertainty that we kind of saw in the clip just before this. showing where that syringe fell. It was a clear syringe with a blue plunger. It's probably a saline flush or a heparin flush syringe from my memory. But there's lots more body narration and eye movement on the recall here. There's no attempt to connect to the jury again. There's no attempt to display lots of emotion or perform in any way. And I think, in my opinion, lack of performance is one of the top 5 indicators of truth telling, especially in situations like this following a big event. When you see narration of the body happen before the words, where she's kind of showing what took place and like throwing something off and all that stuff, the narration starts before the words start. That is a very good sign that somebody's being honest, because they're processing it in their mind as the words are coming out at the same time. So even her thumb is raised, like she's touching the glass tip of a vial there. And when she says, "So I could grab it and throw it," watch her mouth, it stays open. This is a good sign for the truth as well. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, she goes to in her voice when she starts talking about where the syringe went, and she actually uses the term, "it would have been here," which is the way you would expect a person to talk when they're saying something from their inner voice. It's not, "it was lying on my left. How would I put this?" She's an engineer. There's probably some language associated. She shows apprehension when she's talking and describing the syringe. Well, of course, if it were able to make contact, then it would be a big deal for her. So it could be one of those things. The other place she shows internal voice, though, is when she's talking about the backpack and she's explaining how he can hold her down with one hand and dig through the thing with the other. There's a halting cadence that feels like deconflict. Why she's doing that, we can't tell. But other than that, Chase, I agree with you 100% that she is, it's mouth, brain, and body are all saying the same thing, is why she's doing nuanced messaging with her body. Whereas if you're trying to fake that, it gets really tough because you don't think about it. It's like asking someone how to go and start their car, and they'll tell you, "I just open the door, get in and start it." They forget key, open, press the key fob, all those things. And it's just because we do things through such routine. The part that I did find interesting is the only emotion that she shows in this entire thing is when she starts talking about him saying, "You're done with us. There's no more left for you," and all that. She does a hard swallow, more than she did anything else. And her eyes actually even drop down into the right, into emotional eye accessing. We associate where you go in your brain for information with eyes following that flow, and down and right is, for most humans, body language for emotional accessing. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Everything here to me looks fairly normal for somebody who's, excuse me, for somebody who's in a situation like that. She's speaking very smoothly. Her voice tone, volume, and cadence, those are all solid. She does do that thing where she gets quiet, though. She does the fading facts, which isn't fading facts. Got to come up with a word for that. So nothing's really changed from all the other videos. Everything seems smooth, but then again, there's almost zero emotion with this because, and I agree with you guys on the emotions and the reliving it as you go through it. The illustrators, as she's illustrating and narrating this thing, that this is happening when it should. Her arms are moving when they should. We're seeing all those things happen at the correct times. It's not loping, but as she travels through this, it's actually like she's re-traveling through it because she's saying it as it's happening. She doesn't say, "And he pushed me off," and I tried, it came like he pushed or whatever she's saying in there. So everything is locked together, which is good, I think. And her stress, I think her ability to hold her stress together is really, or hold it together emotionally when she's highly stressed is pretty impressive. Because there are, but some people can do it. There are police videos where y'all have seen them, those body cams where some guy's in a room and there's 2 guys shooting at him, and the officer's on the radio talking like he's ordering from Arby's or something. This is really calm, and he's telling the dispatcher what's happening and why he needs help. And you can hear stuff blowing up and everything. See people shooting at him. He's just talking normal. Some people can do
Inoculation.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, some people can do that, and there's nothing wrong with them neurologically. There's nothing wrong with their amygdala. They can just do that. I think she must be one of those people, especially with that gig she's got, which is fairly stressful. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree. Look, there's lots of good detail in her story, and the mime that she's doing, as you were saying, has great detail in it as well. Mime, from Latin, mimosis, to copy. So she's copying live in the room what she felt happened at the time, and the copying is really good and it fits the story. There's there's really good repetition in her emotional speech of what he said. So she says, he said, "We're done with you. You're done. You're done." Now, when people get emotional, they tend to be shorter words, very repetitious, because the language center doesn't have a lot of oxygen. So it produces shorter words, lots of repetition. I suspect she's absolutely telling the truth about what he said to her. Because if she was lying about it or being deceptive about it, she more likely would make up a script that would have longer words in, be more descriptive rather than emotionally tied. So that's really good what's happening there. Great mime, great detail, great recall of something emotional that somebody said. My only problem with it is I'm trying to kind of protect myself, she says. Well, weren't you protecting yourself? Were you managing to protect yourself? I'm trying to kind of protect myself. And her gestures at that point become indirect. So I'm wondering whether that part of the story is being a little bit couched, and maybe there's a possibility that she is fighting back. And she doesn't want to say that, or the lawyer has said, hey, don't get into that you're fighting back. It would be very easy to understand why somebody potentially being attacked here starts to attack back, and it very quickly turns into a bit of a scrap between them, and that might not play well. You know,
it's funny, Mark. You're hitting dead what I saw in that very first video, because in the beginning, they both have grabbings and dancing around that language. They both do. He grabs her arms, she grabs his shoulders, and they're both on the ground and scrapping. I mean, there's something hidden in there.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
difficult to put your fingers on.
and I think we'll see it in the next video or the video after that. I can't remember, but this thing escalates.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I think it was a knockdown drag out. I think they're
do too.
fighting. Both of them were. I think they're both in there fighting like you know what. So, which we're going to find out.
As you might.
Yeah.
That kind of,
Yeah. So I was trying to push off a cliff.
On a cliff. By the way, point of order on the history of this. The area that they were taking a walk was the battlefield of a very famous battle between King Kamehameha and I can't remember who, but like 800 people went off the cliff.
Pushed them off the cliff. Yep.
Off
At
that
that
cliff.
point, it's a pretty Chase. You may well have been to it. I've not been to it.
Hike
But
that trail.
yeah.
Wait a minute. Off that very cliff, they were pushing people off.
The area.
Yeah, like 800, let's say soldiers, warriors went off the edge there. Yeah. It's pretty spectacular. Take a look. Go to Google and Google the scene. It's a beautiful cliff edge.
Wasn't it the French?
No, it was King. It was. I mean, there may have been other battles there, but
yeah.
King Kamehameha went up against. I don't know. It was one of the battles that unified the Hawaiian Islands under King Kamehameha, and he met another army there. I don't think it was the French. It was another indigenous army
or something.
there, Hawaiian army there, and there was and they managed to get them. I think with cannon fire, they had cannons. They managed to get them up to the cliff edge, retreating to the cliff edge, and either they pushed them over in retreat, or the warriors jumped and went, we're done, and we'll end it our way rather.
And that's the same. That's what the Kamehameha Burger and Wings was named after. Was that king?
Really?
I don't think it's Kamehameha.
I knew it. I knew it would come to hot wings in the end.
Yeah, and they're not as good as Hattie B's. I'll tell you that right
Sure
now.
they're not. Sure they're not.
All right, and you said you were able to bat it. Do you know where it went?
It just fell on the ground sort of near us. It would have been to my left because I could still kind of see it in my periphery. So I was trying to make sure it wasn't going to get grabbed again.
And then could you describe what you remember about the syringe, what it looked like?
Sure. It was a clear syringe with a blue piece, maybe blue plunger, I guess is what that's called.
Once you were able to bat the syringe away onto the ground, what did the defendant do next?
So he had taken his backpack off and it was on the ground to his left, so kind of to the right side of my body here. And he was digging in that with his left hand and then kind of holding me down with his right hand. And I'm screaming and I'm saying, what are you doing? Get off me. And he's saying like, you're done. I'm so sick of your, so done with you. And I'm trying to kind of protect myself and get out of there. But also he's gripping his hand closed really hard. And there's a vial in his hand. So I was trying to pry his hand open so I could grab that vial out.
Okay. Which hand did you see the vial in?
The vial was in his right hand.
Okay. And did you actually get to see the entire vial?
No.
Okay. What part of it did you see?
I could see pieces of it because I'm trying to like pry his fingers off of it so that I can grab it and throw it.
Were you able to open his hand that was holding the vial?
Not enough to get the vial away.
All right. You mentioned the defendant was saying some things. Can you tell us what you remember he said as he was on top of you?
Yeah. I'm screaming and he's telling me, shut up. Nobody's going to hear you out here. Nobody's coming to save you. And I'm saying, like, you can't do this. Everyone knows we're on a hike. They'll know this wasn't an accident and our kids will be orphans. You'll go to jail and I'll be dead. Like, you have to stop. And again, he's saying, like, you're done. We're done with you. We don't need you anymore. You're done. You're done.
When you're on the ground, what starts to happen?
She's holding on to me, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But I'm also at this point trying to let go of, like, trying to get free because she's like actively holding on to me. Like she has her leg like wrapped around one of my legs and like is actively holding on to me and is yelling. And so I'm trying to, get free, and I get my one arm free, and I try to use it to get my other arm free, and she grabs me by the testicles. And
okay. Let me stop you there. Did you ever, in the course of this whole thing you described so far, ever try to pull her towards, push her off, or drag her towards the cliff's edge?
No, not at all.
Okay. So you're on the ground. She's kind of holding on to you. You guys are. Would you just kind of like a scuffle going on?
Yes.
Okay. And her legs wrapped around you.
Yes.
You mentioned we got right up to the point where you said she grabbed your testicles. Is that right?
Yes.
How hard did she grab it?
This was like
pretty hard.
She like was holding on to me by my testicles, basically, like that hard.
Okay. Did she grab it and let go, or did she grab it and hold on?
She grabbed it and held on.
Now, what happens after she does that?
Then I try to free my testicles, and so I'm like thrashing with, and I get both hands free, and I'm trying to get her to let go of my testicles, and then she hits me with a rock on the side of the face.
Okay. So she's holding on to your testicles. You're kind of focused on that, obviously, and then at some point while you're focused on that, you
and it happened all really fast.
Yeah.
But
That's I'm glad you raised that up. Was this like happening slowly, where you had
it
time
all
to...
happened within probably less than a minute, maybe
quickly,
slightly more than a minute, but 2 minutes or something.
But you weren't timing it.
From the moment that like we were on the ground and she was grabbing my testicles was like
it happened quickly.
Everything after the grabbing of the testicles happened very quickly.
Okay. And you weren't timing it or anything.
No.
This is just your estimate. Okay.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, actually, Chase was bringing this up as we were rewatching the clip, but his breathing rate is super high now. Now, look, he's now recounting a major point in the story, this tussle that goes on. So, it could be because of that, but I think, quite honestly, he's got to the peak of the story that he needs to get across. You see him looking at the jury for understanding. Like, do you get this? Do you understand this? Do you see what I was up against here? And so he's really got to sell this one, and it's probably because of that his breathing rate is up there. By the way, one last thing on this. He says it's probably a 2-minute fight. like 2 minutes. A boxing round is like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Like 2 minutes is a long. Most people can't go 2 minutes. They can't go 30 seconds.
No.
Like the amount of adrenaline, somebody will overpower or win pretty quick, you know, or instinct will finish it pretty quick. So if they're going for it for 2 minutes, they would both be exhausted by that. So I don't know what's that about. Was it really 2 minutes? I just don't think it can be. So why is he saying 2 minutes? Is his memory so distorted by this, or is he making it up? I mean, is he making up? She went at me for 2 minutes. Nobody lasts 2 minutes. And again, martial artists, please put down below how you can go for full at it for 2 minutes, and you went on that 17-day psychic course with Chase Hughes, and your kung fu is better than my kung fu. Chase, what do you think? What do you got?
I only got to level 1 on the Japanese ball squeezing technique.
For 2 minutes?
Yeah, we didn't get to the 2 minute mark.
And
ever.
MMA,
Not
when we have MMA rehearsal, we do a good 14 minutes, man. That's a focus on it. It's important. It's powerful.
Squeeze.
That's potent. Yeah, man. The
So-
Japanese got it figured out.
As this clip is coming in, notice that he's in present tense. Earlier, I said that's a good thing. But here, the attorney asked him a present tense question. So you're on the hike, you're doing this, and now what's going on? And if you wanted to see if any of this stuff is true, what is being described here, try doing this physically with someone. Exactly how he's describing it, except for the old
Don't
part.
do that.
If you don't have a partner, all you have to do is imagine it exactly as he's describing it. There's tons of behavior stuff here in this clip, but if you just do that, I'm not sure you need it. And then again, just notice how he laughs at the end of this clip, which somebody here is going to talk about. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah. And another thing, let's talk about, we always hate it when the camera goes away from the person who's talking, the person we're focused on. We always hate that. This is the one time I wish that camera had gone back, to whoever's watching, because every man in there would have gone, you'd have seen that move right there. Whoa, a lot of that. Talk about adapting. You'd have seen a lot of it going on then. So I think this is a situation where he's combining the truth and lie. He's mixing them together. Parts of it are true and parts of it are a lie. So, and about grabbing the testicles, I think that part was true. But how he talks about it, no. At no point did he, when he says he doesn't, it was about 2 minutes or whatever, he'd have said hours. It went on for hours. If she had him like that, it would totally blown his sense of time. You go to another land when that happens. I mean, you're somewhere else, like an out-of-body experience. So that would have gotten his attention right there, and everything was almost stopped at that point. I think there's a point where you panic, I guess, and start swinging and punching and things like that. But his limbic system would have popped off like never before. If that's happening, if she's got that good a hold on him, I'm telling you, ladies, listen up. If you have a problem with a man, if you're getting attacked or something, there's how you take care of it right there. You get in there. And don't you let go to the cops show up.
Scott's martial arts advice.
Yeah. It's not even from that. So this doesn't sit right. I don't think he could remember what's happening. If that's going on, there's no way he could do anything else. I think she's got his attention, and right there, she wins at that point. He may be able to get away. I don't know. And at that end, when he's laughing about that, it's funny for a second, but not when you're on trial. Not when you may go to jail for 14, 20 years. No, that part's, it's not funny then, because you may go to prison for you'll be old man when you get out. So that's not good. Greg, what do you got?
So the other thing that's funny is when he laughs, I think he says after grabbing his testicles, it happened very quickly. Like he was reading from something, not like after she grabbed my testicles. The wording is odd too. So it's kind of odd. I think his brain, mouth, and body are out of sync entirely in this video. this is one of those opportunities where you were talking about earlier, you have to respond. You have to think about what's going to happen. If we do liar's loop, you've got to deconflict the lie, pitch the lie, defend the lie, deconflict, defend, that whole cycle. But let's go back and say, what was he doing in the beginning? When he had his storyline correct, you look at the jury, make eye contact, good or bad, that's what he was doing. When you get in a bind, he would turn and look at his attorney when it came to something hot. Interesting. We see him looking at the jury, and when the attorney asked him what was going on, that brow that I said is commonly up, goes up to a new level, up to a request for approval, and stays there as he turns away from the jury to turn to the attorney. I think when he's stressed, he just forgets to make eye contact. And that attorney senses that, and you hear him do a rescue question, a yes or no question, to get him right back on the rails. And this guy is just, there's a thing that I really, really hate in this piece of the equation, because if I were asking questions, I would dive into it. He does another time hiding when he says, I am trying to get my testicle free, and then she hits me with a rock in the side of the face. Okay, interesting. What do we want to look for? We look for, this is powerful. She's got me by the testicles and smashing me in the head with a rock. Don't you expect to see a smash in the head with a rock? Don't see it. Don't know where it's at. The other thing is there's an indeterminate amount of time where his hands are free, because he says, I have both hands free. She has my testicles. I'm trying to get them off. And then she hits me in the head with a rock. He could have been speed bagging, punching her in the face. There's all kinds of things that could have been happening. And he has been big in illustrators for everything else, but that rock is missing. This is suspicious. His story is now falling apart.
When you're on the ground, what starts to happen?
She's holding on to me, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But I'm also at this point trying to let go of, trying to get free, because she's actively holding on to me. She has her leg wrapped around one of my legs, and is actively holding on to me, and is yelling. And so I'm trying to, get free, and I get my one arm free, and I try to use it to get my other arm free, and she grabs me by the testicles. And
okay. Let me stop you there. Did you ever, in the course of this whole thing you described so far, ever try to pull her towards, push her off, or drag her towards the cliff's edge?
No, not at all.
Okay. So you're on the ground. She's kind of holding on to you. You guys are. Would you just kind of like a scuffle going on?
Yes.
Okay. And her legs wrapped around you.
Yes.
You mentioned we got right up to the point where you said she grabbed your testicles. Is that right?
Yes.
How hard did she grab it?
I mean, this was
pretty hard.
She was holding on to me by my testicles, basically, that hard.
Okay. Did she grab it and let go, or did she grab it and hold on?
She grabbed it and held on.
Now, what happens after she does that?
Then I try to free my testicles, and so I'm thrashing with, and I get both hands free, and I'm trying to get her to let go of my testicles, and then she hits me with the rock on the side of the face.
Okay. So she's holding on to your testicles. You're kind of focused on that, obviously, and then at some point while you're focused on that, you
and it happened all really fast.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm glad you raised that up. Was this happening slowly, where you had
It
time
all
to...
happened within probably less than a minute, maybe
quickly,
slightly more than a minute, but two minutes or something.
But you weren't timing it.
From the moment that we were on the ground and she was grabbing my testicles was
it happened quickly.
Everything after the grabbing of the testicles happened very quickly.
Okay. And you weren't timing it or anything.
No.
This is just your estimate. Okay.
On the morning of March 24th, 2025, did you receive any calls from either Ariel or the defendant?
I did.
Okay. And which was it?
From the defendant.
Did telling the defendant any of these things that you told him, did that get him to stop?
No, not really. And I had said, your mom just sent me a really beautiful text for my birthday. Your family will be upset if I die. You can't face our kids after this, And he did seem at that point to, calm down a little bit. It seemed like he took a deep breath and calmed down. And so I had this moment where I was like, okay, this is the break. Like, I can get out. And then he just starts hitting me with a rock.
Okay. I'm going to backtrack for just a moment, Ariel. As the defendant was on top of you, as the defendant was saying things, and as you were saying things back, were you trying to defend yourself physically at all?
Yes. And I'm screaming and trying to defend myself physically. So I think I bit his forearm at one point, trying to, that would have been his right forearm. And then I was also squeezing his testicles with so I had my right hand trying to squeeze his testicles to get him to get off of me.
Okay. And was that, when you were doing those things, was that before or after he calmed down, as you just said?
That was before he calmed down.
Okay. So what happened, you said, after the defendant calmed down?
Oh, well, it felt like he calmed down because it looked like he took a deep breath. And again, I was screaming, and so he's covering my mouth and stuff. And then we had this moment of like, it seems like he takes a deep breath. And then he just starts hitting my face and my head with a rock.
Did you see where the defendant got the rock from?
I didn't see where he got it from, but like spatially, he was like reaching up around this area of my head. So my impression was that there was a rock on the ground near my head that he was able to grab.
Were you just holding your hand around the left side of your head?
Yes, sorry.
When the defendant was hitting you with the rock, did you say anything?
I just started screaming because in my mind, he was trying to knock me unconscious to get to be able to drag me over the edge. So I just was screaming then as much as I could.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
This appears to be truthful, emotional. Notice how there's no selling happening to a jury anywhere. And there is one behavior that I've seen a lot in the last 20 years, and I've never seen a single study on it. At the very end of this clip, pay attention to her lips. They're pursed, but they're separated. And I've only seen this, I think, in one type of scenario. It's when someone finishes a statement and they're trying to get someone to understand their emotional state, or when they're trying to like convey emotion that's really deep. I may be totally wrong, but I've seen this hundreds of times now. And I kind of wondered if you guys have seen this maybe in interviews or something like that. And anybody watching, if you've seen this, when did it happen? What do you think it was maybe conveying? Greg, what do you got?
I think, Chase, what you're seeing may be a pause and apprehension about how she's perceived. That's a combination of some pieces of body language, and good catch. Because everything else here is brain, mouth, and body congruent. Everything is perfect. It's beautiful. She shows real emotion rapidly. I mean, you see it fleet across her face. It's beautiful to watch. If you really want to see it, you have to slow the video down because she has a lot of micro expressions. When she says, "You can't face our children," you see emotion rifle across her face. Then she moves down to inner voice and then right over into right eye accessing. So she looks down to her left. If you try to calculate 980 times 0.15 without cheating, without looking it up with a calculator, if you're going to do internal voice, you'll see her eyes do that. If you think about the last funeral you went to, you'll see emotion over to the right. And we see her go both of those places. And then she closes her eyes as she talks about the most frightening part of the times. That's pretty interesting. And then there's eye flash. You see that eye flash real quick. That is containment of stress, in my opinion, or containment of feelings. And then some mouth grooming. That's release of stress, in my opinion. It's not because she's lying. It's because this is stressful for her. And we're seeing that breathing increase and all of that. So brain, body, and mouth are all speaking the same language. It's a beautiful picture congruency. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I'll push even further on that because we see her do the mime of him hitting her with the rock in his right hand. So she becomes him essentially and displays to the questioner, here's what he was doing. And then she's able, from her point of view, to go and he got the rock from down on my left side. And the two match up. Chase, you've said this a bunch of times before, but often when somebody's being deceptive, they'll take a third person viewpoint, a camera viewpoint, a camera narrative. She doesn't take a camera narrative. She takes her own viewpoint and she's able to do his viewpoint as well because she has a lot of veracity about what happened, what hands were doing what, where, and when. I think you can only really get that if the event was actually happening, or certainly tell the story. Like, you'd have to practice and practice and practice to tell the story that well on command. Most people can't do that. And as you say, Chase, they take a third person view and they start film directing their own made up story. I don't think this is made up at all. I think this most likely happened as she's saying it. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. I think the compressed lips here, that's the way she's adapting. In other words, because she does it a couple of times here. And when we touch our lips or we compress our lips like that in situations, it sends a signal to the brain to relax. And that's, for the most part, that's why people touch their mouth a lot when they're talking. That's probably why I do it when I'm thinking about something. Helps me relax and think. But when she's doing the compressed lips, I think she's so used to keeping her emotions in check. I think that may be one of the ways she does it, squishing her mouth together. So when she's talking about the mother and the children, and your mother, texted me or sent me a card or whatever it was, I think that's a brilliant move because she's humanizing herself again to this guy. Maybe she knows something we don't know about his behavior that we're not aware of. In other words, maybe he, acts. I don't want to say he's a psychopath, but maybe she sees behavior in there where she knows that would bring him back to that moment right then, to bring him back to what's actually going on in time. And apparently it did. So I think that's a brilliant move on her part. And we do see some really weird movements with her mouth. And when she's messing around with her jaw, now she talks about getting hit with a rock in her jaw. But I think she may be reliving that thing about the pain she had there or the problem she had there after that hit. So I think that's what she's doing when she squishes her mouth together right there if she talks about that. And then the second time we see that big, huge lip compression, I think that's holding back emotion from what she's talking about, because that's pretty traumatic, what she's discussing. And she would be the center of it. Again, there's a lot of emotion that's going on when it's a couple fighting like that. There's a lot happening. So I think she's trying to hold back the emotion. And of course, going back to the fading facts thing, I'm still sticking by my thing where it's just the way she talks. It's just the way she is.
Did telling the defendant any of these things that you told him, did that get him to stop?
No, not really. And I had said, like, your mom just sent me a really beautiful text for my birthday. Like, your family will be upset if I die. He can't face our kids after this, And he did seem at that point to, like, calm down a little bit. Like, it seemed like he took a deep breath and calmed down. And so I had this moment where I was like, okay, this is the break. Like, I can get out. And then he just starts hitting me with a rock.
Okay. I'm going to backtrack for just a moment, Ariel. As the defendant was on top of you, as the defendant was saying things, and as you were saying things back, were you trying to defend yourself physically at all?
Yes, and I'm screaming and trying to defend myself physically. So I think I bit his forearm at one point, trying to, that would have been his right forearm. And then I was also squeezing his testicles so I had my right hand trying to squeeze his testicles to get him to get off of me.
Okay, and was that, when you were doing those things, was that before or after he calmed down, as you just said?
That was before he calmed down.
Okay. So what happened, you said, after the defendant calmed down?
Oh, well, it felt like he calmed down because it looked like he took a deep breath. And again, I was screaming, and so he's covering my mouth and stuff. And then we have this moment of, like, it seems like he takes a deep breath. And then he just starts hitting my face and my head with a rock.
Did you see where the defendant got the rock from?
I didn't see where he got it from, but, like, spatially, he was, like, reaching up around this area of my head. So my impression was that there was a rock on the ground near my head that he was able to grab.
Were you just holding your hand around the left side of your head?
Yes, sorry.
When the defendant was hitting you with the rock, did you say anything?
I just started screaming because in my mind, he was trying to knock me unconscious to get to be able to drag me over the edge. So I just was screaming then as much as I could.
So now, she's holding on to you, she's squeezing your testicles, and you kind of dealing with that, and she's on the ground, and you're kind of on top of her.
Yes.
Okay. And you said then you felt you got hit with the rock.
Yes.
Where'd you get hit?
On the left side of my face.
How many times?
She kept doing it. The first blow she landed really well, and after that I was able to block fairly well. She did like land a couple more, but not as bad as the first one.
She still got your testicles?
Yeah, so she's like holding my testicle and just like hitting me like this.
And now do you stop dealing with your testicles?
Just focused on the rock at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it hurt when you got hit with the rock?
You did.
Could we publish what's in evidence as Exhibit D30, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. Gerhard, is this where you got hit with the rock?
Yes.
Is that the area?
Yes.
All right. We can take that down. Now, you get hit with the rock. Explain to the jury what happens next and why.
I was able to wrestle the rock out of her hand.
Does she still have your testicles?
Yes.
Still squeezing them?
Yes.
What do you do?
I was able to like. So we're like she's hitting me and I'm like blocking and then I start like, and I get
Is
her
there
wrist.
a scuffle over the rock?
Yes.
Is it near her face?
Yes. I mean it's
And then what
right.
happens?
And I finally get the rock.
What'd you do?
I hit her with the rock.
How many times do you think you hit her?
I hit her 2 times.
Okay. And when you did, was she still holding on to your testicles?
Yes.
At least initially?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you hit her? Why did you react that way?
Just on instinct to defend myself.
Okay. How fast was this all happening? Pretty fast?
Really fast.
Okay.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Is it me, or did he portray that she had her right hand on his testicles earlier? He's trying to grab that hand off, and you could see it. You're like, come on. Now she had a rock in her right hand, and I guess she's a quick testicle switch grabber. So she just changed hands on him and picked up a rock and went to work on the rock.
TSG.
That's the new one. That's the Chinese version of it. That's a kung fu related, not the that's not the karate.
That was
based
day
version.
10 of the course, wasn't it, Chase?
Tai
That
Chi.
switcheroo.
He really
Type
focused
switch.
on that. We spent a lot of time on teaching that.
But now, so she's hitting him on the left side of the head with her right hand, and he has forgotten the jury is even there. He's looking around. He's looking right at the attorney to the point the attorney has to remind him to explain to the jury. And then you get a bit of a smile once he says he's hit her. It's disturbing almost. I'm sure he feels like, I don't know what he feels, but I can sure see the pain and the emotion bleeding out of him. There's a bit of a smile, then a relaxed posture when he says, I hit her with a rock, and he slouches in the chair, which I see as defeat, not victory.
Mm-hmm.
I think he realizes it's bad. And then that residual emotion comes back, and he looks like he might want to cry. I mean, I thought the guy's going to cry right there. And then he says it happened pretty fast. Mark, I'm starting to wonder, is there not some escalation that got out of control here? Yeah, who knows? We'll cover that as we get closer to the end of this. But Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm with you on the sack switch detail.
TSG.
So listen when this clip comes back on your screen. Listen to the attorney. He's even struggling with this. You're kind of dealing with that. You're kind of on top of her. Got hit with a rock. Didn't even mention a person. And the first emotion that we've seen here at the end of this clip is in response to a question about why he hit her. I think that might be all you need, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, that slump, Greg, that's pre-confession.
It is.
Essentially, isn't it? Basically, he's confessed to hitting her in front of the jury. Now, the lawyer says, why? On instinct to defend myself, he says. So on instinct to defend, but I think we get quite a big cluster around this before, during, after. One element that I want to point out is we get this bitter taste in the mouth there. So he's tasting something about this on instinct to defend myself, something bitter about that. Now, is it bitterness that, he would have to defend himself, or is the reality that it wasn't in defense?
He
at
may
all?
have been enjoying a Werther's original
He may have been enjoying
at that
Well, that
time.
would be, more of a sweet, more of a pleasant. Maybe that's where the laughter comes from. That then
Yeah.
a
So
nice
sweet.
Werther's original moment. Yeah, Greg.
No, I was going to just add, Mark, you're talking about pre-confession. You do see people smile in pre-confession.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I mean the relief.
Yes.
Often of going, okay, let me give it up. Yeah. So I would put good money that he wasn't doing it on instinct to defend himself. Just my opinion. There, not a fact at all. Scott, what do you got?
All right. The thing that bothers me here, the biggest out of all this, is where he says she still has him by the testicles, but he's focused on the rock.
Right.
Nah, he wouldn't be focused on the rock at all. I think somehow he got loose from that or something, because she still didn't have those. I was a professional kid. When I was little, when we discovered that you could do that and you had their attention, there was no question that person was in charge, and whatever was going to happen next, they were in charge of that. And that's where he was. He was in that position. And he's not, if she's doing that, he's not focused on the rock, not at all. So something's not right in here. That's not right. I don't care what anybody says. That's not just, that's my opinion, but something's not right about that. So I think that fake cry there at the end, that is probably one of the worst I've ever seen in my life, because it's time drawing as well. Plus the fact you don't want people to, when you cry, you don't want people to see that. You try to stop it. He's not trying to stop it. He's like facing toward the jury doing it. Like, oh, I'm so sad. I'm all broken up. No, man, this, if you saw nothing else, this should tell you everything, from everything he said to everything he did in here. Nope. That's what I think. Just my opinion, of course, but that's,
I'm just thinking the kids in the neighborhood probably were told by their parents, you stay away from that Rouse kid.
Yeah, he knows. The other kids would tell the other kids. So I've got a story about the 5th grade I'll tell you guys off here in just a minute, which is hilarious.
Statute of limitations is passed on it.
Yeah, it's not me. It's another kid doing it to another kid. And it's hilarious. All right, we good?
Yeah.
So now, she's holding on to you, she's squeezing your testicles, and you kind of dealing with that. And she's on the ground, and you're kind of on top of her.
Yes.
Okay. And you said then you felt you got hit with the rock.
Yes.
Where'd you get hit?
On the left side of my face.
How many times?
She kept doing it. The first blow she landed really well, and after that I was able to block fairly well. She did land a couple more, but not as bad as the first one.
She still got your testicles?
Yeah, so she's holding my testicle and just hitting me like this.
And now do you stop dealing with your testicles?
Just focused on the rock at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it hurt when you got hit with the rock?
It did.
Could we publish what's in evidence as Exhibit D30, Your Honor? Yes. Okay. Gerhard, is this where you got hit with the rock?
Yes.
Is that the area?
Yes.
All right. We can take that down. Now, you get hit with the rock. Explain to the jury what happens next and why.
I was able to wrestle the rock out of her hand.
Does she still have your testicles?
Yes.
Still squeezing them?
Yes.
What do you do?
I was able to so we're she's hitting me and I'm blocking, and then I start and I get
Is
her
there
wrist.
a scuffle over the rock?
Yes.
Is it near her face?
Yes. I mean it's
And then what happens?
And I finally get the rock.
What'd you do?
I hit her with the rock.
How many times do you think you hit her?
I hit her 2 times.
Okay. And when you did, was she still holding on to your testicles?
Yes.
At least initially?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you hit her? Why did you react that way?
Just on instinct to defend myself.
Okay. How fast was this all happening? Pretty fast?
Really fast.
Okay.
What did the defendant tell you during that call, as close to word for word as you can remember?
That he would not be making it back to Maui and to take good care of the younger kids, and that Ari, my stepmom, had been cheating on him, and that he tried to kill her.
Okay.
All right. This was fascinating. Mark, what do you see? How's it looking to you so far?
Yeah, I mean, I like this because we've got two baselines, and just Chase, as I think you were saying, and Greg, you were saying, Scott, you said it as well. Baseline is not we've gone and found video of them, in the wild. No, you're just trying to go, when are they under the least amount of pressure, and can we take get a look of as much of that as possible? We're baselining in the best way possible given the circumstances. Okay, given the circumstances. In this circumstance, it's not a bad baseline, actually. It's pretty good, and there are some stark differences. So go back again, watch those first two videos, go through again for yourselves and really see those differences. This is a really good one to go through again, play again, listen to our commentary again, see what you pick up second time around. Chase, what do you think?
I agree. And I don't think you even need to decide who's telling the truth. Just watch where their attention goes. One person's body is trying to survive something that already happened. The other person is to survive something and how it looks right now. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to tie some of what you both just said. Baseline is important. And what we're looking at is anytime you're in a courtroom, everything is going to be elevated. But your brain, your mouth, and your body should tell the same story. And then it comes across as, I'm nervous, but I'm still going to tell you what I think. Not, I'm nervous, but I'm still going to tell you my story. So what we're seeing is that. And what we're seeing is a person whose brain, whose mouth, and whose body is conveying consistently the same message, regardless of the question asked, however, a little bit of hiding something that Mark and I both were poking on, while the other person appears to be hiding almost everything, and his brain, body, and mouth are not in sync. And if you watch nothing else, just go watch those pieces on round two and see when everything starts to not mesh. I'm telling you, you will not believe it. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with you. I really like this one because we got to see what most people don't get to see. It's when somebody's fussing, you get to see that person talking and this person jumps in, they fight back and forth and you get derailed and go over. None of that because it's in court. They're asked the same questions and it's in two completely different time zone areas. In other words, I think his was first and then hers was second. Is that right?
Him.
She came first? I'm
Yeah.
not in the videos, but I mean in real life.
I think she came first. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So anyway, at different times. So you're not seeing anybody be able to jump in and derail anything. So I think that's really good. We got to hear they got the chance to say exactly what happened. And we saw the differences in someone, in my opinion, being honest and someone being deceptive. So I think it's a great example and a great situation where you can go back through and watch this and say, oh, I see the differences here. I see why someone would see this as deceptive or someone who sees this as being honest. So I really like this one. This is a really good one. All right, fellas, I think this is another good one, and we'll see you next time.
The behavior panel.
Chase, you're not wearing that cowboy hat, are you? Put it on. Put it on. Let's see it.
Suits you.
Do you practice in the mirror saying things like howdy ma'am and things like that?
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, as one does. You
Yeah.
don't just fucking put this on and go out there.
You got to train, man.
Yeah.
You gonna wear it?
How long?
I'll keep her on.
How long do you have to train before you can put on something like that and
It's
know
a
the lingo?
17-day program they have. It's online.
Excellent.
The same place I got my black belt.
I see people
like
walking
20
around
bucks.
those all
Nice.
the time, even around here. And I'm like, you make a living at it. Yeah.
I've got one like that, but it's
This is just stretchy.
Yeah.
So you can
Nice,
do
it's
yard
stretchy.
work in it, and it soaks the sweat up.
Well, that's I've got one that I wear when I'm outside, straw hat in the
It
summer.
actually suits you. There's clearly some kind of genetic code that's in, that you were.
Oh, I can't wear one. I agree because I can't wear one.
Yeah.
You
Not
talk about
everybody
feel
can
like
do
you're
that.
You need
goofy.
the model cheeks though.
Well,
Yeah.
and what they do is they make different hats for different face shapes.
Oh, do they? Okay.
You got one for a fat face?
Oh.
Yeah, I just got mine off the rack. And boy,
got
does
a
it
little-
look cool.
It's got a bunch of feathers on the front of it.
It does.
Wear with your
Yeah.
shorts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not everybody can. It's like the boots. Not everybody can wear the boots.
I can't do it.
I
Can't
love
do it.
boots. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
The hat and the boots. That's like, and the buckle. Now
I don't
that's
have I have a buckle. It's old, a long time ago, but I wear boots all the time and I wear a hat when I ride.
right.
That's what it's like. Well, back when we were doing country remixes, when that shit started, me and one other guy started all that. And we'd go to the clubs and see what they were listening to, so we'd know what to
Yeah.
remix. And it was just like it's so weird. It's like if you went to a doctor bar and everybody's
Yeah.
dressed up like a doctor,
Yep.
It's the same thing. It's
Right.
really weird. Really weird. See these big belt buckles and these guys out there scooting around and it's weird.